Today we're going to be learning about different types of grammar rules. And of course, it'll get harder, the rules will get harder as we move on. So if you have a question, please just unmute yourself and ask the question because I can't see your faces. So these are all of the grammar rules that we're going to be going over today. A few of these are probably really familiar, and some of these you probably have done before, you just didn't know the name. So of course, there's past tense. Usually when we're writing, we want to write in present tense, not past tense, unless it's for history class, then you want to always write in past tense. There's sentence fragments, run-ons, comma splices, vague this or which, subject-verb agreement, pronoun consistency, pronoun case, ambiguous pronoun, passive voice, and progressive tense. And this may seem like a lot, but when we go through it, you'll realize that it's actually not too much. So in past tense, as I just said, when we write, we usually use present tense and not past tense. So instead of saying she went to the store, we would say she goes to the store. Instead of saying he ran up to his dog and gave his dog a hug, we would say he runs up to his dog and gives his dog a hug. And this last one, the baby stopped crying after seeing candy. Thomas, could you unmute yourself and tell us how we would correct this sentence? So which word is in past tense that we need to correct to make this sentence in present tense?
Crying?
No, not crying. Try again.
Sure.
No, the is an article and it doesn't affect present or past tense.
Stop?
Yeah, it stopped. So instead of saying the baby stopped crying after seeing candy, you would say the baby stops crying after seeing candy. Okay, actually, can somebody else just unmute themselves and give me another example of a sentence in past tense and then how we would correct it?
I have one.
Yes, Caroline?
Tim gave his dog a big fat bone. That's the past tense, supposed to be Tim gives his dog a big fat bone.
Good job. Okay, so past tense is probably really easy. I'm sure you guys have all done this before. So the next three, I think you guys might have also learned, but you might not have known the name. So the first one is a sentence fragment. So sentence fragments are sentences that miss a subject or a verb, or they're just not a complete thought. And so the first one, although she went to the store, that's not a complete thought. When you say it, it feels like you're pausing and then you need to finish up the thought. So this is the example of a sentence fragment that's not a complete thought. So if we want to fix this, we just have to add something to the end of it, something that's just related to although she went to the store. So you can buy apples at the store. So in this case, we could fix it by saying, although she went to the store, she forgot to buy apples. And the second part of the sentence is what completes the thought. Now this second example, under the bed, this one is missing a subject. So William, is William here?
Yes.
Yes, okay, William, could you fix this sentence for us?
Under the bed, there was a dirty sock.
Yeah, so we can put under the bed at the beginning. So it could be like, under the bed, there was a dirty sock. Or we could put the second part at the beginning. So you could say there's a dirty sock under the bed. So just any object or just any, you can add anything to complete the sentence as long as it makes sense. So, okay. Can someone else besides Caroline unmute themselves and give us an example of a fragment and how you'd fix it?
On the piece of paper. And how you would fix it was on the piece of paper there was my schedule.
Yeah. We could also put the schedule at the beginning and say, my schedule is on the piece of paper. So either way works. It's just up to you and how you decide to write it. Okay, so the second part of sentence errors is a run-on. And a run-on is basically a sentence that has too many independent clauses in it and they're not joined together properly. So we can fix this by adding a comma.
I need to write things down.
Oh no, Caroline, you don't have to write it down. I'll share it on Google Classroom.
I still want to write it down anyway.
Okay. So you can fix run-ons by adding a comma with a conjunction between the two independent clauses. You can just stick in a semicolon and call it a day, or you could add a period and then capitalize the S, or capitalize the first letter of the subject in the second independent clause. So can you guys just raise your hands or type in the chat whether you've used a semicolon before? If you have, if you have used a semicolon before, can you just type it in the chat? Okay. Only 2 people, anyone else? Okay.
What about what?
About, have you ever used a semicolon?
First, I do not know.
I know what it is, but I haven't used it yet.
Okay, so a
I'm only
semicolon.
in second grade. I have never used them pretty much.
Okay, so I'll just explain what it is really quickly. So a semicolon is a type of punctuation, as you can see. And basically what it does is it connects 2 sentences that are very similar. So in this case, she really likes pandas. She went to the zoo to see pandas. Both parts of the sentence are about pandas, and they're both independent clauses. So that's why we're allowed to use a semicolon. And usually semicolons are the easiest way to fix run-ons, because run-ons have 2 parts that almost always are related to each other. You can just stick in a semicolon where the first independent clause ends and where the second one starts. Does that make sense? If you're uncomfortable with using it, you don't have to use it. I think you'll learn later on in school more about how to use semicolons, so it'll be fine. Jessica, could you tell us how to fix the second sentence?
The cat likes to play with the rubber ball and it likes to sleep in the sun.
Yeah. So there are 3 ways we can fix it, as I said at the beginning. So one of them, as Jessica just said, was to add a conjunction. But when you add a conjunction, make sure that the conjunction, that you choose the right one. So in this first one, she really likes pandas, so she went to the zoo to see pandas. It's like, because she likes pandas, then she goes to the zoo. However, if you put a different one, like let's say you said she really likes pandas, yet she went to the zoo to see pandas, then that sentence doesn't really make sense. So when you fix run-ons by adding a conjunction and a comma, you always need to make sure that your conjunction links the sentence correctly, that it makes sense logically. And The two other ways, again, you can just put a period and then capitalize the T and the in this case, or you can just stick a semicolon in there. So can someone besides Amy and Caroline give us an example of a run-on and how to fix it?
I can.
Yeah, go for it, Thomas.
Just wait a second. The chicken eats corn, but he also likes to walk around and chase cats.
Yeah, so you gave us a good example of how to correct it, and we could correct the linking the two independent clauses. Okay, so the last part of sentence errors is a comma splice. So a comma splice is a type of run-on. It's a run-on that is only connected with a comma. So if we go back, instead of saying the cat likes to play with the ball, comma, and the cat likes to sleep in the sun, it would just be the cat likes to play with the rubber ball, comma, the cat likes to sleep in the sun. And having just a comma isn't enough to fix the sentence. So if there's a comma there, you can fix it by adding a conjunction that makes sense, or changing the comma to a semicolon and a period. So any one of those works. You can just choose the one that you're most comfortable with. So in this case, the dog rolls in the grass, comma, the dog is very happy. It's a run-on, but it's just connected with a comma, so we can fix it by adding so, and that would make sense logically, and we can just get rid of the comma and add a semicolon or a period. Sandy, can you correct the second sentence for us? This one's a little harder if you want to add a conjunction, so try your best.
Oh, I messaged secretly. Oh, I messaged secretly to Thomas Yee because he asked me, what the hell, how are you, and why did you know?
Okay. Could you still help us fix this sentence?
Oh, first, I'm turning first grade, but I have the writing level of a third grade.
I see. Okay. Could you fix the sentence for us, please?
The one on the very bottom.
Yes.
The child likes reading books, so the child likes reading books, but the child likes chapter books the best.
Okay, yeah, so but would make sense in this case because it's like saying chapter books is like the best one that the child likes. We can also use and in this case. The child likes reading books and the child likes chapter books the best, but either of them work. And again, we can always fix this by just putting a semicolon instead of the comma, or a period and capitalizing the first letter of the next word. So I'm not going to ask for an example of this because it's pretty similar to the run-on. Okay, so now is where the new stuff comes in. So if you have any questions, please just stop me. You can just interrupt me if you're a little confused or if I'm going too fast. So a vague this or which is when you use the words this or which without having a subject related to it. So if it's just one sentence, like it is in this case, it's really, it's hard for the reader to know what you're talking about. And you can just fix this by adding a subject after the word this or before the word which. And sometimes it may sound like it's too repetitive, like in the second sentence, you might be thinking, oh, well, it's obvious that everyone knows that watermelon's a fruit, but it's easy, it's better to just clarify everything in this sentence and have it sound a little bit repetitive, but be grammatically correct. So in this first sentence, this is so fun. So if you're saying this to, let's say you're like at a friend's house and you're playing Monopoly or something, and then you say, this is so fun, that would be fine. But when we're writing, and if I only have this sentence right here, I would have no idea what you're talking about. So all you have to do to fix this is add a subject after this, and just anything works, anything that makes sense or is under your definition of fun in this case would work. So you could say, this game is so fun, this book is so fun, this movie is so fun, anything that you want. So which, when you want to fix the vague which, this is a little harder because you have to figure out what the which is referring to. So in this case, the which is referring to watermelon, and watermelon is a fruit. So we would just correct this by saying watermelon, a fruit which is very delicious, is good to eat in the summer. Okay, now this last one.
Can I do it?
Yeah, go for it, Caroline.
Okay, so the one is, can you pass me this? And the next one would be, and the question would be, can you pass me the ketchup, because I need to put some more ketchup on my hot dog?
Yeah, so anything that would make sense. So any object in this case. So it could be anything you want. Amy, I saw you had your hand raised too. Do you want to try and make up a sentence? Here, how about I give you a sentence and you correct it too. So let's say I wanted to say, can you give me this? Similar to this example, instead of can you pass me this, can you give me this?
You can replace this with any kind of object that makes sense, such as a paper.
Yeah, but make sure that you're not replacing it. You're adding the subject after it. So if you replaced it, then it would become, can you give me paper? And that doesn't really make sense. You need an article before paper. So instead of just replacing this, we would add it afterwards. So can you give me this paper?
Can you give me this pencil?
Yeah. Thomas?
One.
Is everything okay? You had your hand raised?
Okay. Koi fish, a very, very beautiful and big fish. It is very fun to have a
Yeah, so we can go off of that. So your example was a koi fish. So you could say a koi fish, or just koi, a fish which is very beautiful, is fun to play with, or something like that. Okay, so the which is always going to be a little bit harder than this, but does this make sense generally? Okay, if no one's going to say anything, I'm just going to go on. So subject-verb agreement. This one you probably like know instinctively, like you've probably read it before and you were like, oh, this sounds weird and this is wrong. So that's kind of what subject-verb agreement is. It's when the subject and the verb in a sentence doesn't match. So if you have a singular subject, then the verb needs to be singular as well. And if the subject is plural, the verb needs to be plural. So for example, they goes to the bookstore to buy books. This just sounds weird, and that's when you know it's wrong. So because goes is for singular nouns, like she goes to the bookstore to buy books, we have to change the verb, right, in this case, because goes is wrong. So the plural form of goes would be go. So they go to the bookstore to buy books, and that would be correct. So similarly, she liked to eat cake. No, like is for plural nouns, like we would say they like to eat cake. And so we have to change like to likes for the sentence to make sense. It becomes she likes to eat cake. Okay. If your screen, hold on. If I haven't called on you yet, could you like hit the hand raise thing so I can call on you? Okay. I'm sorry, I can't see your name, but the person who has that landscape profile picture, could you? Oh no, oh no, it already came out. Okay, just kidding, it's too late. I pressed the wrong button. So instead of saying he write an essay about his favorite foods, we would say he writes an essay, because we use write for plural nouns. But Ellen, could you give us, I'll give you a wrong example, and then if you could just unmute yourself and say what the right version. So let's say I say that he jumped really high when playing volleyball. How would you correct that sentence?
He jumped very high when playing volleyball.
Yeah, good job. So I think this one is easier than the one that we just covered, because usually it just sounds wrong, and then that's when you know you need to correct it. So does this one make sense? If no one says anything, I'm just going to move on. Okay. No, okay. So now we're going to get into pronouns. So the first one is pronoun consistency. So when you're writing, you don't want to change your pronouns. If you start out with using like she, you want to keep on using she, her, hers, instead of changing it to like they. So in this case, they want a dog, but she doesn't have money. If you had more context at the beginning, it would make, like, let's say this female person is part of the group, then it would make more sense. But because we don't have any context at the beginning, we can't just say she doesn't have money. We would have to say they don't have money. And in this case, sometimes when you're changing your pronouns, you'll find that there's actually a subject-verb agreement error. So in this case, because I changed from a singular pronoun to a plural pronoun, I also have to make sure I change the verb that goes with it too. So always be careful about that. And the student returns their book to the library. So no, because student is singular, it's only one student, not students. We would have to say his or her book, not their book. And just, could somebody just guess what this last one would be?
One has control over his or her own life.
Okay, So that was good. That was good because one refers to anyone. So you would want to say his or hers instead of just her. But there is something tricky about one. It's if you start out using one in pronoun in a sentence, you always have to continue using one. So in this case, we would say one has control over one's own life. So that's just like a general rule. If you start out with using one as a pronoun, you have to continue using one for the rest of the sentence. Even if the sentence is really long and you keep on saying one over and over again, you just need to make sure you keep on using it. So it'd be one has control over one's own life. Okay, wait, does this one make sense? Okay, I'm going to give another example with one, and just to make sure you guys get it, and anyone can just unmute themselves and answer. So one who, actually, I'll just type it in the chat. So one who tries harder than she who doesn't will always end up better. So one who tries harder than she who doesn't will always end up better. Can somebody just unmute themselves and say the answer?
One who always tries harder than she. No, actually, one who tries harder than. Okay, whatever. I don't know.
That's okay. Yes, okay. Alina sent me a private message, but she said, I'll just copy paste for you guys. One who tries harder than one who doesn't will always end up better. So just make sure if you start out with one, you need to continue using it. Okay, does that make sense? Could I get like a thumbs up from some of you guys?
Thumbs up.
Okay, thank you. Now here's our second pronouns one. So this one is called pronoun case. It's when you use the incorrect version of the pronoun. So you have subjective versus objective. There's also possessive, but usually possessive pronouns are not often missed. So I'm just going to focus on these two. So for subjective, the subjective version, we have I, and then the objective version would be me. So you would say like, I like candy. Then I am the subject of the sentence. But if I say that like the dog likes me, then the dog would be the subject and I would be the object of the sentence. So it depends on where your pronouns fall, and that's how you know when you're wrong. Usually for this too, it just sounds weird. But the one that you need to be really careful about is who and whom. If you know the difference between who and whom, could you hit the little hand raise thing? No one?
Maybe.
Maybe. Okay. So you know when to use who and whom based off of what happens after the pronoun. So I'm just going to type it in the chat. So usually
I have no idea about that.
that's okay. That's why we're here to learn. If you knew everything I was talking about, I would be sad. So we'd say like, who has a pencil, right? So in this case, who is the subject? And we know that who is the subject because there's no subject after who. So for example, when we use who wrong, it would be like her friend of 20 years who she really likes to hang out with is finally visiting her. So in this case, we have she right after who. And we have she, and then we have the verb likes. So that's when you know that who is wrong, if you have a noun right after who or a pronoun. So instead of saying who she really likes, we would say whom she really likes. Does that make sense? So another example would be like his older brother who, like if we say he has an older brother who really likes dogs. This sentence is fine because we don't have a noun or a pronoun right after who, and we have our verb. So in this case, who functions as that noun or pronoun. However, if it was like hold on. So if we say he has his older brother whom he really likes is really tall. In this case, we use whom because we already have a pronoun right after whom. It's he. So if we said who he really likes, that would be wrong because he is already there to function as the subject. So when you want to correct this, just look after who or whom. If there is a pronoun or a noun right after it, then if there's a pronoun or a noun right after it, then you know it has to be whom. So you just add on an N. But if there is no pronoun or noun, then you need to make sure that it's who, not whom. Does that kind of make sense? I have an example later, so if it doesn't make sense right now, it's okay. Okay, I'm going to move on then. Oh, and overall, for it and you, the subjective and objective form is the same. Okay, so for everything except for who and whom, it usually just sounds really weird, just like subject-verb agreement. So do these books belong to she? That just sounds strange, so we know that we need to fix it. And like you probably know that it should be her instead of she, you just probably haven't heard of the name before. So do these books belong to her? Yes, that sounds better and it makes more sense grammatically. So this is the whom example. So her best friend, who she is friends with for 10 years, is finally visiting. Because we have she right here, she functions as the subject. So we can't have who. We have whom instead of she, whom instead of who. But if there was no she, then we would have to have who. Does that make sense? Could somebody unmute themselves and let me know? Does it make sense or does it not? Okay, well, I'm just going to assume that you guys understand it. So this last one, who ordered an apple juice? Oh, them did.
I think it's supposed to be who ordered an apple juice. She or he.
Yeah, so we can So you knew that it shouldn't be, if we go back, it shouldn't be the objective form. It should be the subjective form. But we do want to keep the pronouns the same. So of course you could use she or he, but because the subjective form of them is they, we would want to change it to oh, they did instead. But she or he works as well. Okay. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm going to move on because we don't have that much time and I still have a few to cover. Okay, so this last pronouns one is ambiguous pronoun. This one is probably easier than the last two, so that's good. So ambiguous pronouns are pronouns that can refer to two or more people or objects in a sentence. And we need to fix this because if we don't know whom the pronoun is referring to, then the sentence isn't very clear. And we want to make sure that the reader always understands what we're trying to say. So we can fix this by using the person's name or the name of the object in place of the pronoun. So for example, Rebecca and Ashley wanted to buy ice cream, but she forgot her ice cream. Well, in this case, we don't know who forgot her, but she forgot her wallet. In this case, we don't know which girl forgot her wallet. And because there's no context before, we can just choose one. So in this case, I chose Ashley, but you can choose Rebecca if you want. And now in this sentence, Rebecca and Ashley wanted to buy ice cream, but Ashley forgot her wallet. This sentence is a lot clearer because it tells us which girl exactly forgot her wallet. So the same thing, Tom and Henry ordered pizzas and he asked for extra cheese. So we don't know what the he refers to because there are two boys in this sentence. So we would just have to choose one of them. Tom and Henry ordered pizzas and Tom asked for extra cheese. Of course, if it was like Tom and Sarah ordered pizzas and he asked for extra cheese, that would be fine to just leave it as it is because Sarah is a female name while Tom is a male name. So using he, we know that he would refer to Tom and not Sarah. Okay, so this example is a little hard. So can somebody just try and take a stab at it?
The cities were reconstructed for tourists and had the history of the cities hidden.
Yeah, good job. Okay, that was really good. So in this case, them can refer to either the tourists or the cities. But because the history of the tourists doesn't really make sense, it makes more sense if it was the cities. Does that make sense? Could I get like head nods from people? Okay, okay, good. So passive voice. This one is a little harder and we only have 5 more minutes, so I might not be able to cover everything, but we only have 2 more, so let's try. So passive voice is when you indirectly say something. The format is usually is, are, and then you have a verb, and you have the word by, and then a noun. So we, for example, would be like the book is written by a famous author. So because this is like you're indirectly saying that a famous author wrote that book or writes that book, we need to fix it by putting a famous author at the beginning. So when we fix it, it usually comes out to be the noun and then the verb and then the rest of the sentence. So when we say it this way, it's a lot clearer what you're saying, and also it sounds a little less wordy. So having like a famous author wrote that book, there's less words than the book is written by a famous author, and it's clear to like figure out the meaning. So that's, of course, like using passive voice is completely fine. It's a writing style that some people have, but in this case, it's just easier for the reader to understand what you're saying when you say it directly instead of indirectly. So instead of the food is eaten by the dog, we would say the dog eats the food. And the last one, the child is held by her mom. Can somebody just unmute themselves and tell us how to fix it?
Her mom held the child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the mom holds her child. Good job, Thomas. That was good. I was scared that you guys wouldn't get these. Is anyone having trouble understanding passive voice? No? Okay, I'm just going to move on quickly to the next one then. This one's the last. Oh. Okay, so the last one is progressive tense. Again, just like passive voice, progressive tense is one form of writing that some people just have, and it's fine if you write like it. It's just when you write in that way, it's a little wordy. And usually it follows the form is, are, and then you have your verb and then an ing. So we will fix this by just deleting the is, are, and then getting rid of the ing and then adjusting the verb, however. So if we had she is walking to the grocery store to buy fruit, it has the same meaning as she walks to the grocery store to buy fruit. It's just the first one, this first one right here is longer. So we can change is walking to walks, and that way our sentence is shorter and it's shorter and it's easier to understand. So we fix this again by just deleting the is and the ing, and then because she walked to the grocery store to buy fruit is a subject-verb agreement error. We need to add an s because walk is for plural nouns, and while walks is for a singular noun, and since she is one person, we need to make sure that the verb also goes with that. So the second example, he is running to school because he woke up late. There's nothing wrong with the sentence, but saying he runs to school because he woke up late is shorter and it's easier to understand. So this last one, they're eating vanilla ice cream. Can someone unmute themselves and let us know how to fix it? Someone who's not Thomas, Caroline, or Amy, because they've answered a lot. Jessica, could you tell us how to fix this one?
They ate vanilla ice cream.
Yeah, that would just be they eat vanilla ice cream. Okay, that's it. We made it. So
why can't you say they eat vanilla ice cream and they ate vanilla ice cream?
Yeah, so you can say they ate vanilla ice cream, but remember the first one, past tense, when we're writing for like language arts class or English class, we almost always want to use present tense, not past tense. So ate is past tense, like they ate vanilla ice cream. So we would want to say they eat vanilla ice cream instead of they ate vanilla ice cream. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so next class, we're just going to be, I'll post the slides to Google Classroom right after we finish. And next class, we'll be doing a worksheet over the grammar rules that we just learned today. So next class, once you're done with the worksheet, then you can just leave. But it's 3 pages, so it might take a while. And make sure that you review a little bit before class next time, so you don't like forget everything. And if you have any questions, you can always just like type in the chat to me directly, and then we can figure it out. Okay, so that's the end of class. I will see you guys next week. Bye.